The royal ship Ilarian's Grace floated through the blue mist above the shining world of Velra. The stars around it shimmered like dust scattered by the hand of creation. Inside its crystal walls, light flowed like water, and the air hummed with soft energy. Princess Seria of Velra stood near a tall window, watching the planet turn slowly below. Her long white robes moved gently as if a quiet wind passed through the hall. She was known across many systems as the Moon Princess, proud, graceful, and cold as the winter moons of her world. For as long as she remembered, her people had feared the humans. To them, Earth's people were reckless, loud, and driven by emotion instead of reason. The Velrans were a race of thought and balance, known for their calm speech and careful movements. Seria had been taught since childhood that humans were dangerous because they cared too deeply, fought too quickly, and loved too fiercely. To her, passion was chaos, and chaos was weakness. That belief was easy to hold, until the Galactic Council decided to test her pride. After the long war between several star nations, peace was fragile. To protect it, the Council suggested cultural unions between royal families and military leaders from different species. The idea was to make friendships where there had been fear. When they proposed that a human representative visit the Velran court, Seria refused immediately. She had stood tall before the Council of Elders and said, "I will not open my heart or my home to a race that destroys what it touches." Her words echoed through the chambers. No one dared challenge her except one. The High Regent, her uncle, spoke with slow authority. "Princess Seria, your father believed that peace must be protected by courage. If you turn away from this, the Council will think Velra is proud beyond reason. We cannot afford that. You will host the human." Her jaw tightened, but she bowed. "As you wish, my regent. I will do my duty." And so, weeks later, the human ship Soul's Dawn arrived at the edge of Velran space. It was not large or elegant like their vessels. Its hull was black, scarred from battles, and its engines burned with a raw blue fire. When it docked with Ilarian's Grace, the Velran guards lined the halls, their polished armor glowing with gold light. They expected arrogance. They expected a man who spoke too loudly or carried himself with the pride of a conqueror. But the man who stepped out surprised them all. Captain Daniel Reeve was young, but his eyes carried the weight of 1,000 days of war. His uniform was simple, his medals few. The right sleeve of his jacket was folded neatly where a metal arm gleamed, quiet proof of a sacrifice made long ago. His voice when he spoke was calm. "Captain Daniel Reeve of Earth, reporting as ordered." Princess Seria watched from her throne. The human was tall but not imposing. His posture was steady, his expression unreadable. She wanted to see arrogance in his face, but instead she saw something she didn't expect: patience. When their eyes met, time slowed. Her guards waited for her to speak first. "You are far from home, Captain," she said coolly. He nodded once. "Farther than most humans ever travel, Princess. And you came here willingly?" "I came here because peace is worth the distance." Her gaze flickered. His words were simple, but his tone was steady, like steel wrapped in calm. She dismissed him with a nod, but deep inside a quiet thought stirred. He spoke like someone who had seen the edge of death and learned to smile at it. For the next few days, Daniel moved carefully through the Velran Palace. He studied their customs, their language, and their graceful way of walking. The alien courtiers often whispered when he passed. Some mocked his plain clothes. Others whispered stories of Earth's violent past. But Daniel ignored them. He spent his time learning, watching how they moved, how they bowed, how they spoke to one another. Princess Seria, however, avoided him. She told herself she had better things to do than entertain a human soldier. Yet somehow she kept hearing stories about him. The engineers spoke of how he had helped lift damaged cargo with his robotic arm. The cooks mentioned how he had thanked them, something no noble had ever done. Even the guards admitted he had asked to train with them, not to show off, but to learn their combat style. Still, she stayed distant. Her pride was her shield. One night, however, that distance vanished. The ship was crossing through the nebula of shadows, a region of unstable plasma currents. It was supposed to be safe, but without warning, an energy surge hit the ship. Lights flickered. The deck trembled. The soft hum of the engines turned into a deep roar. "Reactor core overheating," shouted the chief engineer. Panic filled the control room. Seria was thrown to the ground as the ship shook again. Guards rushed to her side, but before they could lift her, a voice came from behind them. "Get her to safety. I'll go to the core. It was Daniel. Without hesitation, he ran toward the reactor levels. The guards tried to stop him, shouting that it was too dangerous, but he didn't even look back. His metal arm sparked as he forced open the emergency hatch. Saria rose to her feet, her heart pounding. Through the flickering security screens, she saw him moving through the smoke-filled corridors. The temperature was rising fast, glowing pipes bursting around him. He climbed across twisted beams using his arm to block falling debris. "Human, the radiation level is rising," shouted the engineer through the comm. Daniel's voice came through, breathless but steady. "I know, I'm almost there." He reached the main valve room. The power regulators were failing, plasma leaks spilling light across the floor. He used his metal arm to twist one of the manual override wheels. His skin blistering from the heat, sparks flew, lighting his face. His eyes were steady. "Pressure dropping," the engineer said, shocked. "He's stabilizing it." Then a second explosion rocked the ship. The camera feed went black. Saria gasped. "Find him," she ordered. "Now!" Minutes felt like hours. Smoke spread through the upper decks. The alarms finally faded. The hum of the engines returned to normal. The core had been sealed. The ship was safe, and then, through the haze of the damaged corridor, Daniel appeared. His uniform was torn, his face streaked with soot. The metal arm glowed faintly red from the heat. But he was walking. When he reached the command deck, everyone stood silent. He looked at Saria and said simply, "Systems stable. You're safe now." Her breath caught in her throat. He had risked his life for her ship, for her people, without question, without reward. She stepped forward, her usual calm replaced by something unfamiliar. "You went alone," she said softly. "You could have died." He shrugged lightly. "Someone had to go. I was the closest. That was not your duty." "Maybe not," he said, meeting her eyes, "but it was the right thing to do." For a long moment, neither spoke. The air between them was filled with quiet understanding. In that silence, something inside Saria began to shift. Later that night, when the ship floated once more in calm space, Saria stood again by her window. She looked at the stars, but her thoughts were far away, with the human who had risked his life for strangers. She tried to reason with herself, to explain away what she felt. It wasn't admiration, she thought. It was gratitude. But when she closed her eyes, she saw his face again, calm, fearless, and kind. He had spoken little, but every word had been honest. She realized how rare that was in her world, where people spoke only what was safe to say. Daniel had no mask. His truth was plain, and somehow that truth warmed the cold edges of her heart. The next day, she found herself walking to the training deck. She told herself it was for inspection, but when she entered, she saw him there. Daniel was alone, practicing with a training spear. His movements were strong but simple, his breathing steady. The guards outside had laughed, saying a human could never master Velran techniques. Yet Saria watched as he adjusted his stance again and again, learning from each failure, repeating until it felt right. "You're persistent," she said from behind him. He turned, a little surprised, but smiled. "Comes with being human, princess. We don't give up easy." She stepped closer. "Even when you know you can't win." Especially then. She looked down, her lips curving slightly. For the first time, her voice softened. "My people believe emotion clouds judgment, that it makes us weak." Daniel set the spear aside. "Maybe it does. But sometimes feeling something deeply is what keeps us alive. Without emotion, we'd never fight for anything worth saving." She studied him for a long moment. "You think humans are wiser than us?" He shook his head. "No, just different. You build harmony. We build hope. Maybe both are needed." His words lingered in her mind long after he left the room. That night she stood before her mirror staring at her reflection. For years she had been certain of everything, her duty, her beliefs, her control. But now, one human had turned all that into questions. Over the next few days she began to notice things she had ignored before. The way Daniel treated everyone with respect, no matter their rank. How he fixed broken equipment himself instead of calling for servants. How he stood quietly during council meetings, never demanding attention but always listening. One morning she found a group of young Velran cadets teasing him about his missing arm. He didn't get angry. Instead he smiled and said, "Don't worry. It just makes me half machine, half stubborn." They laughed and somehow the tension vanished. Saria watched from a distance, her chest tightening with a strange feeling she couldn't name. This human didn't fit the stories she had heard. He wasn't reckless or wild. The next sunrise over Velra's orbit was quiet, but inside Alarian's grace, the silence carried tension. The Galactic Council had called for a royal assembly. Delegates from 20 worlds were coming aboard, and Princess Seria was expected to make a public statement about the human presence in her court. Some wanted her to reject the alliance and send him back to Earth. Others wanted her to accept the treaty and join the Council's shared defense plan. Seria looked calm as she prepared for the day, but inside her heart felt heavier than her crown. For nights she hadn't slept well. Whenever she closed her eyes, she saw Daniel's face. The calm expression when he walked out of the smoke. The kindness in his eyes when he spoke of peace. She didn't know what to call this feeling. She only knew that the world had changed quietly inside her. Outside her chamber, Daniel was walking down the long corridor lined with glass pillars that held moving blue lights. He was in full uniform, his metal arm polished, his badge shining under the ceiling glow. He looked tired but ready. The meeting today was important not only for Velra, but for Earth too. He knew some of the Council feared humans, and he wanted to prove that trust could still be earned. When he entered the royal hall, the Velran guards nodded respectfully. They had begun to admire him. Even those who had once doubted him now spoke of the night he saved the ship. He had never boasted about it, never asked for praise. That quiet courage had earned more loyalty than any speech could. Seria saw him across the hall as she prepared for the Council's arrival. Her breath caught for a moment, but she quickly hid her reaction. She couldn't let anyone see what her heart was beginning to show. "Captain Reeve," she said formally, "you may stand beside me during the assembly." Daniel bowed slightly. "As you wish, Princess." Hours later, the great hall was filled with delegates. Tall, scaled beings from the Yanth, shimmering Etherians, armored Vorn warriors, and even human officers who had traveled from Earth to witness the event. The air hummed with tension. The High Regent stepped forward. "The Council of Worlds welcomes the union of Velra and Earth," he said. "But before it is confirmed, Princess Seria must give her decision." Every eye turned to her. Seria stood tall, her silver robes flowing like light. She glanced at Daniel, who stood silently beside her. His presence gave her strange strength. She began to speak. "For centuries, my people have lived by the rule of calm reason. We have feared passion, believing it brings ruin. We have looked upon humanity with caution, because their emotions burn brighter than we understand. I too believed that fire was dangerous." She paused. "But I have seen that same fire save lives. I have seen courage that does not ask for reward. I have seen what honor truly means." Her voice softened, but every word carried across the hall. "So today I do not say no. I say yes to peace, to understanding, and to the bond that might bring both." A low murmur spread through the hall. Some nodded, others whispered. The regent looked surprised but pleased. The human delegates exchanged smiles. But before anyone could speak further, the floor shook. The lights flickered. A deep alarm began to wail. A guard shouted, "Unidentified ships approaching. They've broken through the defense grid." Daniel's hand moved instantly to his communicator. "All security units to positions. Evacuate the delegates to the safe zone." Outside the windows, streaks of red light crossed the stars. Unknown ships, sleek and black, were firing on Alarian's grace. They carried no flags, no signals. They were raiders, scavengers who hunted peace convoys for ransom and power. Seria's guards surrounded her, but Daniel stepped in front of them. "Get her to the command deck," he ordered. "I'm coming with you," she said firmly. He turned sharply. "Princess, that's not safe. And it's not your job to protect me alone," she replied. "This is my ship." For a moment, their eyes locked. Then he nodded. "Then let's keep it flying." They ran through the glowing corridors as the ship trembled from blasts. Smoke filled the air, alarms echoed, and crew members rushed to stations. Daniel moved quickly, directing teams, sealing hull breaches with emergency fields and guiding the princess through the chaos. His robotic arm glowed as he rerouted power panels with precision. On the command deck, the captain of the ship shouted, "They've breached docking bay 3. Raiders incoming." Daniel grabbed a blaster from the wall and handed another to a Velran officer. "Hold the line until the outer doors seal. We can't let them reach the reactor." Seria stood beside the command console, her eyes wide but calm. She could see small fighter ships swarming outside like dark insects. Each explosion lit the sky. "If they reach the core, we're done," she said. "They won't," Daniel answered. "Not while I'm breathing." The word sent a tremor through her heart. Moments later, the first raiders broke through the lower deck. The sound of impact echoed across the halls. Daniel and a group of guards moved to intercept them. Saria wanted to follow, but the regent stopped her. "Your safety, princess." She shook her head. "My duty is here." Down in the docking bay, Daniel moved through smoke and flickering lights. The raiders were heavily armed, their armor glinting with stolen tech. But Daniel didn't hesitate. He used his mechanical arm as a shield, deflecting plasma bolts while the guards fired beside him. The air was thick with heat and energy, but he kept moving, forcing the intruders back step by step. Then he saw something that froze his breath. A bomb, magnetic and pulsing. Stuck to the main coolant pipe, he shouted, "Everyone back! There's an explosive!" He ran toward it, but the nearest raider lunged, slashing with a glowing blade. Daniel blocked it with his arm, sparks flying. The blow drove him to one knee. The raider pressed harder, grinning through his helmet. Daniel's mechanical fingers locked around the blade, twisted and snapped it in half. He slammed his metal fist into the raider's chest, sending him flying. Without wasting a second, he turned to the bomb. His fingers moved fast, disconnecting circuits, tracing power lines. The timer read 10 seconds. His voice was low and calm through the comm. "I'm defusing it. Keep the line clear." Saria heard his voice through the speakers. "Daniel, come back." "That's an order." He smiled faintly, whispering, "Some orders can't be followed." "Princess?" 5 seconds. 4. He pulled the main charge wire. 3. The red light flickered. 2. Silence. The bomb powered down. He let out a breath and leaned back against the wall, the glow of the ship's lights returning around him. The raiders were retreating. The defense drones finally launched and drove them away. On the command deck, cheers filled the air. The ship was safe again. When Daniel returned, smoke still clinging to his uniform, Saria walked straight toward him. Her crown was slightly tilted, her eyes bright. She stopped only a step away. "You risked your life again," she said quietly. "You could have died." He smiled faintly. "It's becoming a habit, I guess." Her voice softened. "Why? Why do you keep doing this?" He looked into her eyes. "Because peace is worth fighting for, and because when I see someone I care about in danger, I can't stand still." The air between them grew still. Her heart pounded so loud she could almost hear it. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Later, when the council reconvened to assess the damage, Princess Saria stood before everyone once more. Her tone was clear and powerful. Today, a human saved not only this ship, but every life aboard it. He did so without command, without reward, and without hesitation. Let this be written into record. Humanity has earned Velra's trust. The hall erupted in applause. Even the regent bowed his head. Daniel stood quietly, trying not to draw attention, but Saria turned toward him. "Captain Daniel Reeve of Earth," she said. "You came to Velra as a stranger. You will leave as a friend of the crown." He bowed deeply. "Thank you, Princess." Days passed, and peace slowly returned. The damaged sections of the ship were repaired, the council's decision confirmed, and Velra and Earth entered their first official alliance. But what no one saw was how Saria's heart had changed forever. One evening, when the corridors were quiet and the stars burned softly outside, Saria found Daniel in the observation chamber. He stood alone, looking out at the galaxy, his metal hand resting on the window rail. She walked up beside him. For a while, neither spoke. The silence between them was warm, not empty. Finally, she said softly, "You're leaving tomorrow." He nodded. "Yes, the council wants me back on Earth for the signing." She looked down. "Do you wish to go?" He smiled gently. "Duty says yes." "My heart," he paused. "My heart isn't sure." She turned toward him, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then maybe your heart has learned something from mine." He looked at her with surprise and quiet warmth. "And what did your heart learn, Princess? That reason alone is not enough to live for. That peace means more when it comes with understanding. That sometimes," she said, stepping closer, "a human can teach a princess what it means to feel." He smiled faintly, his voice almost trembling. "And sometimes a princess can remind a soldier what it means to hope." For a long time they stood there under the stars, two souls from different worlds bound by something larger than duty. Neither spoke of love. but the word hung in the air like a secret both already knew. When the next dawn came, Saul's dawn prepared to depart. Saria stood at the airlock, watching as Daniel saluted one last time. "Until we meet again, Princess." "Until we meet again, Captain," she replied.